Hello? Hello?
Podcast Network Asia.
Welcome to She Talks Peace, a podcast that highlights the role of women peacebuilders around the world in bringing lasting peace and security to communities. Eavesdrop on their communities and get to know their stories. From the Philippines to Malaysia, from Indonesia to Palestine, from Myanmar to the United States. Their dreams and hopes for a world without violence and a world where every woman and girl can be whoever she wants to be. Hosted by Amina Rasul Bernardo, President of the Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy. This is She Talks Peace.
Can you imagine how it is affecting their lives? How they're growing up in this atmosphere
Now, can you just imagine being afraid to go to the mosque
to the
because
mosque?
you might be subjected to a bombing incident as
Exactly.
well. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another interesting episode of She Talks Peace. I'm Amina Rasul of the Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy, joining you from Manila. My partner, Dr. Ayesa Uy Abubakar, is still unable to join us today. She had an operation, and she'll probably tell us more about it when she rejoins the show. Dear listeners, I was listening to a news podcast the other day about how Pakistan has been enduring days of uncertainty after the tragedy that struck them on January 23rd. They not only have faced a national power outage, you can just imagine not having electricity, being in the darkness, and it's still cold in Pakistan. And then a week later, on January 30, a Taliban suicide bomber blew himself up during the afternoon prayers in a mosque in Peshawar. 101 people have been killed, according to the news. More than 200 were injured. The bomber disguised himself in a police uniform and was able to sneak into a high security zone, going to a mosque that was frequented by security officers, by policemen. This suicide bombing in the Peshawar mosque supposedly is a conspiracy that was hatched in Afghanistan and funded by that country's intelligence agency, according to one analysis by investigating officials. Now, the interesting thing, dear listeners, is that while the Pakistan Taliban originally claimed responsibility for the suicide bombing, hours later, an official spokesperson of this group, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, or TTP Pakistan, distanced the group from the bombing, saying it was not in their policy to target religious sites. I'm really concerned, and I must say curious, about how our friends, the peoples from Pakistan, especially the women, have been coping with this situation in Pakistan. One of my friends and colleague in Pakistan has family on her mother's side in Peshawar, and she must be so concerned. So I have invited my friend Huma Chughtai to join us on the show today. Now we're very lucky because Huma is an independent human rights and legal service professional with over 30 years of experience working in the fields of governance, gender and development, parliamentary strengthening, judicial reform, Sharia, and human rights. Huma is a very much sought after consultant. With her 25 years of working in these areas, she has been a consultant with the UN, the Asia Development Bank, and international NGOs. A lawyer, she got her degree from the University of Nottingham in the United Kingdom, practiced law for 2 years, and then became a legislative researcher for the National Assembly of Pakistan. And she focused on areas like Sharia, constitutional, legal, and judicial issues, women's rights. And, she also serves as a legal advisor to the government's Ministry of Women's Development and the Women's Parliamentary Caucus. In 2010, Huma was the chief coordinator of Pakistan's first parliamentary women's convention on the role of women parliamentarians in peace and reconciliation. And I gather that that conference was a huge success. She also works as a trainer for the well-known Paiman Alumni Trust of Pakistan. And with this organization, she works with men and women, youth in the conflict areas to teach them about conflict resolution, peace building, and human rights. Welcome to the show, Huma.
Thank you, Amna. I'm honored to be here on your show. I've been listening to this, and it's a very interesting and I think one of the most popular ones.
Thanks so much, Huma. So, Huma, you must be in touch with your family in Peshawar. How are they?
Well, they are quite perturbed, disturbed, and concerned given what is happening there. And it has been happening for quite some time, periodically. And it does not stop anywhere. The children are upset. Can you imagine how it is affecting their lives? How they're growing up in this atmosphere
Yeah,
of
can you just imagine being afraid to go to the mosque
to the
because
mosque?
you might be subjected to a bombing incident as well.
Exactly. Exactly. To the schools, to the mosques. They have this. How do you feel when you always have to, look over your shoulder where you are? And especially when it is happening to your law enforcement, then even if they're not safe, what is
That's right.
happening?
That's
You know?
right. I mean, it's
And
so
it is
easy to
not
just get a uniform, right? Put it on and just sneak in because
exactly,
you don't put the metal detectors around a mosque. You
exactly.
have thousands of mosques in Pakistan.
Exactly. And like when you are wearing a uniform, you don't tend to check your own, like your own colleagues who are
Right.
there. You may not be knowing them because there are hundreds of them. And you just think that they're in uniform and then you just let them pass. Because if you question them, then if they're genuine ones, they'll say, "Hey, are you crazy? I'm one of you." And just amongst them is somebody who's a new face. Probably they've just been transferred there.
Your government had negotiations with the TTP, and it broke down, right?
Yeah.
Last year. So
Yes.
now the TTP has been stepping up attacks against the government. What happened, Huma? Why did the talks fail?
Well, they are very difficult people to deal with. Actually,
I
they
could
have their own
imagine.
nuances. They have their own perceptions and thinking patterns, and they have their own lifestyles. And this was something that should not have been dealt the way they have been, actually. And I think we were wrong in the way they were dealt with, in all honesty. um, they had also, government at that point in time, the previous government had also released from the jails a lot of criminals, as they had done
Uh-huh.
in Afghanistan also, if you
Oh
know.
yeah, yeah.
In Afghanistan, they had the new Taliban regime had released hundreds of Talibans from the jails, amongst whom, indiscriminately, amongst whom there were criminals as well,
Mm-hmm.
who threatened their judges. And
Mm-hmm.
amongst those judges were not only male judges, but also women judges who
Mm-hmm.
went underground, and many of them who were also targeted and killed,
Oh
you know,
wow.
and the law enforcement as well. So, where do we protect those people who had actually put them behind the bars on account of certain law that existed? That law was breached, that law was violated.
Mm-hmm.
So, do we have something, you know, to protect these people who pass a judgment on account of certain facts on merit?
Is there any possibility in your mind of meeting on common ground? I mean, can the
There
TTP
is,
and yes,
there,
what
there
would
is
be the
always.
common ground?
You see, there has to be, there can be, and there has peace negotiations always have to be on a mutual agreeable minimum agenda,
Mm-hmm.
and that is a possibility. It's never, politics is always about discussing minimum agreeable agenda. From where you start off, there are things you don't agree on, all right, you put them aside and you put it on a back burner. But then there are always things from where you begin your talks with. You gain each other's confidence. There has to be confidence building measures, those measures have to start off with. The problem is that we just get scared or something. At one point in time, the military had established military courts to deal with offenses of terrorism in those areas, the borderline areas, or where these offenses were taking place.
Uh-huh.
Now there was a huge debate about that. That why is military taking it up? Now the problem was that the judiciary does not have that kind of protection for themselves. They don't have those weapons to protect them. They don't have those boots to protect them or their families. You see, the protection that our poor judges have, the police that is there to protect those judges is generally, given to them from the police force, and those police officers or the police soldiers that are given to them are usually, unfortunately, sick people with diabetes or something, or just sitting there outside a judge's, courts and all that.
Not effective in securing.
Ineffective, just there to show that the judge is being protected, that sort of thing, unfortunately. So we have been trying to make sure that there has to be a special force trained to protect the judges, the judiciary. Because then, if a judge is scared of passing a judgment or give a ruling, then he or she has to feel securer, you know, that his or her children do not suffer or face or confront any sort of, insecurity, threat to life,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
or any sort of threat. So that is one of the problems. Now,
What do they want, Huma? What does the Taliban want?
they want their own rule. Their they want their sort of uh, interpretation of Sharia, which is, many a times the people who were caught or arrested as Taliban, they were asked to recite kalima.
Oh,
They could not even recite kalima. They were asked to recite small ayats, verses from the Quran. They could not, which means that these are just people who were who
Yeah.
were just there with a beard or a dress, and they could not. So these are just people who are hard headed, who have no clue of
Of
what it
Sharia.
is all about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even otherwise, there was this uh, about, I think, 8 9 months back. I was coming from, I have a little farm, citrus farm outside this Rawalpindi, Islamabad, and there was some kind of a rally around this Norwegians who had discredited the Quran or verse or
Mm-hmm.
something, and there
Mm-hmm.
was a whole rally, and they were like blocking the roads and everything. So my mother is aging and very fragile, and so she was with me. I had taken her to the farm just for a ride, and she could, like enjoy the place. And this was about 3 o'clock when we were on our way back. And then they had blocked the roads. We waited and waited and waited. It became about 5 o'clock. And then, like they were not opening the road. All these, like bearded people and these, so called clergy sort of people or Taliban sort of people. And I got off. Eventually, I got upset because Amma was feeling upset. She
Mm-hmm.
needed her medicines. She needed
Right.
rest. She needed to go to the loo.
Right.
So I told the driver to go and talk to them. He came back. He said they will not let the cars pass. So it was getting dark, and then I got off. And I said, "Who is managing this place?"
Mm-hmm.
And they started looking at me. And I had, like a big chadar, like the big
Mm-hmm.
veil on me. And
Yeah.
I said, "Who's managing?" And I said, "Who are you? Why?" I said, "I want to talk who is managing this place." I said, "Why are you blocking these places? Do you realize I'm a woman? I have an older mother. She needs to go to the loo. She needs medicines. And you're blocking this place." And one of the chaps, this Charlie, says, "Oh, no problem. Even if your mother dies, do you know?" I mean, he had the cheeks to tell me.
Oh my
If your,
goodness.
yeah, he says, "If your mother dies, do you know she will be a shaheed and she will go directly to the Jannah?" I said, "Are you crazy? Tell me that."
That's
And I
crazy.
started, and I looked at him and I said, "Where are you coming from? Can you quote me something?" And I started speaking in Arabic. My Arabic is not too good, but I started saying, anta kafir, ma haza, and I started talking in Arabic.
And they
and I
couldn't
started,
understand you?
and I said, "This is going to be, you are going to kill her, and this is qatl, and this is that, and the other." And I started relating the verses from Quran on qatl, and they were looking at me, and I said, and there were, other young boys with beards, and they started making my video. And then the older ones came and they said, "What are you saying? These people are crazy, because even if you start saying Assalamu alaikum or anything, they wouldn't know whether I'm talking about
That's right.
Sharia or I'm talking about
That
Arabic
is
or I'm
right.
saying Assalamu alaikum as a mark of respect." So, I mean, they said, "What is it?" I said, "He's telling me it is going to be, and do you realize that this is qatl? And there are young women, and do you realize that if you stop their way, this is haram in Islam, and this, that, and the
Mm-hmm.
other." And then they said, "Oh, no, no, please forgive him, forgive him." Who said this? I said, "This boy said, and this man said, and this." And then they, "All right, we'll open the way for you." Then they opened the way and they said, "Let them go." And this one, they gave us a chaperone, and we made our way, and we came home at around 11:30.
Oh my goodness, Huma.
These are
Listening.
they are so ignorant. They
Yes.
are so ignorant. Can you imagine
And
somebody?
and yet they are in control because they have guns.
The blind are leading the blind.
I was just wondering, Huma, in the during the negotiations, did you have women at the
No,
table?
no,
Maybe they should have had more women in the negotiating panels. Then maybe like you, they could have put their foot down and gotten somewhere. So tell me, Huma, why
exactly.
were there no women at the negotiating table with the
Because
TTP?
You see, the culture is as such that they don't expect. So my in the previous years, I had proposed, when I was also technical advisor to the Women's Parliamentary Caucus, I said, if women are not there on the
Mm-hmm.
negotiation table, at least you should be able to take our points to the
Yes.
negotiation table.
Yes.
Obviously, it will not be presented the way it should be, but the
Mm-hmm.
points should be presented. Now, at this point in time, I am producing a document for the
Mm-hmm.
government. Well, it is, I've been asked to do that,
Mm-hmm.
in which I am putting this, that women should be, there, present there, because we have come a long way. And
Right.
it is in this age and time, it is when we are talking about digitalization and all that, where this is the theme of our International Women's Day as well. Where are we for the countries, you know where in Asian countries, we have to
Mm-hmm.
contextualize as well.
Yes.
you know where are we? I mean, we have been, our women have lot of potential, our women have been way ahead,
Mm-hmm.
but still we are way behind also. So where we are behind,
Yeah.
we need to put our foot down.
Huma, you were the chief coordinator of that convention of parliamentarians looking at
Yes,
the role of women in
yes.
peace
Peace and
processes and so on. Since 2010, has the parliamentary caucus moved? Is it gaining some traction? Do you think that that group of parliamentarians can manage to really push for having women at the negotiating table? Is that possible?
Well, there was a declaration. I will share it with you, that we had passed, and then from time to time we had recalled that declaration as well. But it is generally matter of political will as well. A,
Ah,
B, the interest of the one who's heading the like the caucus. So
mhm.
the previous secretary was pretty vibrant. Even now, she is the one who is asking me to put this in the document that we are preparing for the government. But the one who's now the secretary is sort of not into it right now, because this is
Mm,
sort of interim kind of setup, and the way political situation is at the moment. But the proper kind of document, that the manifesto is also there, that is being put into, in the manifesto as well, that we would like to have this into, the women to be part of the peace processes, peacekeeping,
mhm.
reconciliation, reintegration processes. Women need to be part of it, and social cohesion as well, because they play a very important role in it. And we need to identify our champions, whether women or men, or even transgenders.
I was just thinking with what's happened in Peshawar. Do you think women and well men who support more empowerment for women, who support peace building, you think they're going to be not scared, but will be prevented from working like Paiman, for instance, Paiman Trust.
Hmm.
You do have projects, you have training programs in Peshawar.
Hmm.
How will the bombing, the suicide bombing, how will that affect the work of Paiman and peace builders in Peshawar?
I think it will. It has a lot of opportunity. Peman is one of the credible organizations. I think at this time, you see, one of the dynamics of the police has been that it is not as strong as it should have been,
Mm-hmm.
because in terrorism, generally it has been the Rangers or FCs, which are basically army, which have been taking the lead in this. This time, the police chief has vowed that they are going to take revenge in terms of strengthening themselves as police and making sure that they are strong enough
Mm-hmm.
in terms of their resources, in terms of their trainings and everything. So he is vowed. The IG police of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, in which Peshawar is the capital. So that is there. And in those trainings, I think organizations such as Payman have a lot of potential to chip in their their experience, and I think they will have a place there, inshallah. I
And they
see
will
that.
be supported. They'll be supported by the security sector.
Yes, I think so. They will be. They will be, because this is the time that the security sector needs credible organizations such as Payman.
I was just thinking about your conversation with those bearded young men who were blocking the road in and knowing your
Yes,
expertise in Sharia and
yes,
secular law.
yeah.
How would you develop an advocacy campaign addressed at these young bearded men so that they will understand that they're following misguided interpretations of Sharia? How would you reach them?
You see, Amina, one thing, let me put on record, clarify. The Constitution of Pakistan has a
Mm-hmm.
preamble, and
Mm-hmm.
there is also a very clear cut article that says there will be no law that will be made
Mm-hmm.
uh, that is repugnant to the injunctions of Islam.
Right.
Hmm? And it says the supremacy lies with Allah.
Right.
So apparently, whatever law is made is in consonance with Islam.
Right.
This is something that probably these people don't know or understand, right? So that is one thing. The other thing is, for instance, back in late 2007, 8, I had initiated going to. Now, we also have uh, uh, Islamic Ideology Council
Mm-hmm.
that was made to review any law that is being passed, or a law that is there, to review it with
Mm-hmm.
the Islamic perspective. So Islamic Ideology Council is sort of a watchdog there
Mm-hmm.
to make sure. So it has a chairman, and it has a group of ulema from different sects.
Uh-huh.
Now they are there, and they said something there, whatever they there is, if they have any problem there, and they have, like, they're not all there is never a consensus. Perhaps there are also dissenting notes, or there are also different views, but they send their report for the
Mm-hmm.
parliament to review.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is how the law is also passed, and then the Ministry of Law reviews those views, and then they integrate those in that law, or they have a discussion, and after that, the law is, put in place. So I had started, uh, doing sensitization way before, even before I had joined Payman. This is where I'd
Mm-hmm.
started. That I had started sensitizing the Ideology Council members with
Uh-huh.
CDAW. For instance, started
Okay.
off with CDAW,
All right.
and sort of linking it up, CDAW articles with Islamic injunctions. I had a whole 1 week session with them. You know, this is what is, like, this is, with Islamic, verses and ahadith
Mm-hmm.
and everything. And this is how we had a good discussion. So this is how we started off with them, and that went very well. And there were good discussions, and some of them agreed, some of them did not, but most of them agreed that this. So human rights conventions,
Mm-hmm.
it was very very important that we start doing that with Islamic Ideology Council.
that's actually a very important thing to point out to our listeners, Huma, that by using scripture, by using the Quran and the Hadith, you're showing that CEDAW, which is the Convention for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, is not just a Western notion. It
Yes.
is supported by Islam. And in
Yes.
order to be able to send out that message, you're absolutely right. You have got to sensitize the ulama because they're the ones who can talk about Islam. So that's a fantastic
Appro-
strategy.
yes.
And Payman is doing that now, right?
Yes, yes. And then we have in Pakistan also developed a document called Pegham Pakistan. Pegham means message,
Mm-hmm.
in which about 80 ulama have sort of developed a message which says, it talks about um, uh, terrorism and peace, and how it is against Islamic injunctions, and they have all agreed and signed. And then that was actually all done by men.
Mm,
So we had stood up against that and said, why weren't we part of that? Then
right.
they had sort of developed a little setup of Dukhtaran Pakistan. Dukhtar is daughter. So
Aha.
Dukhtaran Pakistan. So I'm one of also the founding partner or member of that Dukhtaran Pakistan, and we keep doing that, and it is constantly doing activities across Pakistan, and how peace can be achieved through sports, through dialogues, through
Aha.
so Dukhtaran Pakistan, and we have developed that. So I will try and send you those documents.
That would
You
be
know.
really excellent. You know, Huma, listening to you telling us about the strategies that you've been using and the work that you've been doing, it makes me wonder why weren't you involved in the negotiating table? I mean, if there were women like you on the negotiating table with the Pakistani Taliban, you would have gotten to common ground a little bit sooner. So, is there a chance, Huma, for women? Should you continue with the
I think
negotiations
there
with the
is a
Taliban?
chance, but the thing is that it's the mindset. They don't want to talk if a woman is there. And I don't know when that time will come that they will have to accept. In the beginning, what had happened was that we did have once, about I think 7 or 8 years back, a lady being part of that. But they did not, because you see how you present yourself also, They say,
Mm,
do as the Romans do. So if
mm,
you are dressed up, a bit veiled, uh, then it is, the acceptability is there.
mm-hmm.
So that is very important. Then I think also the language barriers, because they're Pashtuns.
Ah, okay.
I'm not a Pashtun.
But before we close, Huma, uh, if there was a chance for you to send a message to your government, to the parliamentarians, about the work you do, about why it's important to have women at the negotiating table, about why you should have negotiations continuing, what would your message be, Huma?
Well, I think it is together we stand and apart we fall. It is very important that women are there, because women and men complement each other. Women think differently, they have
Mm,
a different approach, and men need to understand that, and women also need to understand that how they need to act, you know and go along. So both of them, they have to go hand in glove with each other. Only then it works out. So I think the governments need to understand that women have to play a meaningful role. It's not just sitting behind a table is enough. It is playing a substantive role with, accuracy and their, heads over their shoulders.
Thank you so much for that message, Huma. And you're absolutely right. One of the key takeaways that I get from talking to women peace builders from Asia, there is always this point stress that men and women complement each other, that we have to be allies, we have to work together. There is never this sense that I am right, so you have to admit that I'm right. So it's always consensus, common ground. Huma, honestly, you should be on that negotiating table advising your government. So thank you so much, Huma, for joining us today. And dear listeners, I hope that you enjoyed this conversation with Huma Chughtai as much as I did. And I do hope, and I'm certain you did, get some very important lessons from our conversations today. So, dear listeners, thanks so much for staying with us. This is Amina Rasul of the Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy, thanking everyone and saying bye for now, and we'll see you again next week. Huma, would you care to say goodbye to our listeners?
Thank you so much. It was such an honor and pleasure to be amongst your audience. And thank you so much, Amina, and your team to have me on board. I was honored and great pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye bye and Allah Hafiz.
Bye.
She Talks Peace is brought to you in partnership with Podcast Network Asia and Podmetrics, the easiest way to monetize your podcast. For more information, check out their website at podcastnetwork.asia and podmetrics.co.
The views and opinions expressed by the podcast creators, hosts, and guests do not necessarily reflect the official policy and position of Podcast Network Asia, the hosts of the program, or other programs of the network. Any content provided by the people on the podcast are of their own opinion and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone or anything.